Hello everyone, Miss Hart here. I just wanted to share with you today some art that I've been making at my house and thought maybe that you would want to make it too, so I would show you how. So this painting right here, I've been really inspired by the nature outside. It's spring now, it's been really nice weather, so I spend lots of time outside reading in my hammock, and I've noticed that there's lots of robins out lately, so I was inspired to paint this picture just using some watercolors and some oil pastels that I had at my house. And I thought, well, maybe my art students would love to do this project too, but maybe you don't have watercolors and oil pastels at your house like we do in our art room. So I created another painting, this one right here, just using some basic crayons and markers, right? And it looks just as good and it looks like paint. So I'm going to show you how to paint with markers today. It's super easy and it's super fun. So I'm going to switch it over just to the stock cam here so you can see. I'm going to show you the supplies you'll need, and you're welcome to follow along with me, pause if you need, and make this beautiful painting as well, or make your own version of this painting, right? I just wanted to give you an opportunity to be creative at home. So, here we go. Alright, so before we get started making this beautiful robin painting with the beautiful blue eggs and the nest, I'm going to show you some basic supplies that you'll need to get started. So first off is your paper. I'm just using like a watercolor paper I had at my house, just a small sketchbook that I had. If you don't have watercolor paper, you can use copy paper. Just know that if you're using copy paper and you're getting it wet, just know that it rips really easily. So you might want to use a little bit thicker paper if you have it. So if you have just like a sketchbook at home, usually that paper in a sketchbook is a little bit thicker and able to hold water better. But if not, copy paper will do. Just be careful with adding water to it. So papers, first thing, pencil and eraser to draw with, and then to color it in and to paint with, you'll need just some crayons. I'm just using some Crayola crayons, but any crayons you have will work, as well as some markers. Now make sure they're washable markers. They don't have to be Crayola, but just make sure there's some kind of washable marker, because that's what really makes the paint work. So I'm using these super tips. That's just what I had here at my house, but the larger markers are fine too. Any really washable marker will do. And then, of course, we're going to be painting with markers, so you'll just need some water, nothing fancy, just some water, cup, and a paintbrush. Any size paintbrush is fine, smaller tends to work better. And then here are two optional things. If you noticed in both of my paintings, I have some kind of really cool textures going on in the eggs and in the nest. So I'm going to show you how to use some things you probably have in your kitchen to do that with. So those things are just some salt, some table salt, so salt shaker at home. Just shake out some salt on a paper towel or in a little cup, and I'm going to show you how we're going to use that to make some really cool designs on the eggs of the robin. And then for the nest, if you have it, you're going to want to get some plastic wrap. Plastic wrap is really good for making these really cool textures. So the plastic wrap looks like this. It's clear. You often use it to put over food. Or if you don't have this, you can use like a grocery bag and just cut it into smaller pieces. Just something plastic, so it helps make these really cool textures. And I'll show you. Again, these are optional. If you don't have them, you can still make this artwork. These are some cool things you might have at your house that you can use. So to get started with, we're going to be drawing a robin, and I will show you how to do that. So you can feel free to pause the video if you need to. But we're just going to start here in the middle of our artwork, and we're going to draw the beak. So if you notice, the beak's kind of like a sideways letter V. So I'm going to go ahead and draw that first, kind of making it curve down just a little. And then the beak is the mouth of the bird, so there's a little line there, so that's where the beak would open. Now the top of the head is just a curved line, kind of like you're drawing a little hill, like that. Then it kind of curves in a little bit, and then we're going to draw the wings. So notice there's going to be lots of curved lines. If you can draw basic curved lines, you can draw this bird. So I'm going to curve the line down to a point, like this. And then I'm going to kind of curve it back up. I'm not going to go all the way up to the head. I'm going to stop. That's like the bird's wing, right? And the pointier you make this, the better. Okay, so kind of if you look at it, kind of like another letter V shape. Now this part of the bird, right, very colorful. It's what robins are known for. So you're going to come down here to the beak. You're going to curve it in just a little, and then now we're going to curve it back out. Think of this belly. This bird has a really big belly. So curve that down here. Now we're not going to worry about the legs because the bird is sitting on the nest. So you can make as many eggs as you want. So eggs are just rounded, kind of oval shapes, but they're smaller on the top than they are on the bottom. So I'm going to make this egg kind of touching. Here, maybe this egg has turned sideways, and then maybe there's an egg here kind of behind the mom bird. So just curved lines, think of it like oval shapes, right? But I'm kind of leaving it half because I'm going to make these lines for the nest now, like it's actually sitting in the nest. I'm going to make a line going from the bird off the page, a line going on this side of the bird off the page, and then, oh, we forgot the eye, so I need to draw the eye on the bird. So the eye on the bird, kind of go close to the beak, bring it over, more of a circular shape than a football shape like our eyes. Circular shape, make sure you leave a little circle for the reflection. That's what makes something look more realistic. We'll add the colors later. So now the last thing I'm going to add is this beautiful branch up here with the flowers that really remind me of spring. So flowers, just kind of making almost like a letter M shape, very wiggly, making those petals. Your flowers don't have to look exactly like mine, but there we go, there's a flower. I'm going to draw some smaller ones, some bigger ones, just using these kind of wavy, wiggly lines. So just kind of fill the top of your page with some of these flowers. And you don't have to do the same amount that I do. You can have more, you can have less. Just kind of put some flowers up here, maybe a little one up top. Then I'm going to connect those flowers with lines like a tree branch. I'm going to make it thicker up here, and I'm going to make it get smaller because tree branches, as they go up, they get skinnier, otherwise the tree would fall over, right? So there we go. I'm going to make this branch coming up here, going off the page. Once you have that, that's the basic drawing. So basic curved lines to draw that. Okay? So now if you haven't got this far yet, pause it and finish this. Then you're going to want to find your crayons. Because before we paint, we're going to have a few details using our crayons, just because watercolor painting doesn't affect crayons. So first off, I'm going to take the black, because robin have black and gray feathers, as you can see here. And I'm just going to kind of make some lines here, kind of imitating the feathers inside here. Just some lines. You don't want to color it in. You're just making some lines to look like feathers. Now, once you get to the top of the bird, their head's much darker, so I'm going to kind of color, but not all the way. Still kind of making those lines to look like feathers. Again, my lines here are more close together because it's darker up top. Now, I'm going to take my white crayon. If you don't have a white crayon, don't worry about it. You can just leave it white, but I'm going to put some white over the top of the eye. That way if I accidentally get my paint there, it's not going to paint on top of it. Because remember, crayons are made out of wax, so water resists it, which means it goes away from it. There's also down here at the bottom of our bird a little bit of white. It kind of covered it up here when I painted. But I'm just going to do a little bit down here and again over the eye. If you want to do a little dot in the eye, you can leave that white as well. That's what the white's for. Again, if you don't have a white crayon, you can just leave it white when you're painting. Now I'm going to take a brown and just kind of make some lines in the nest. Remember, nests are made out of whatever a bird can find, twigs, grass, all different kinds of things. So just kind of make some lines in here like it's made out of branches. There we go. Once you have that, I'm going to kind of do some lines in the tree to kind of get the wood grain. Again, I'm not coloring with these, I'm just drawing like that. So lines inside. Then I'm going to find a green or a yellow, doesn't really matter, whatever color you want to be the inside of the flower, and draw some just lines sticking up, right? And sometimes people like to put little dots on top of those for the middle parts of the flowers. You can use green or yellow for this. Either one is fine. Just some lines with some dots on top for each of those. You can see there, I've done that. Next here, I am going to take a pink, or whatever color you want your flowers to be. I chose mine to be pink. Yours doesn't have to be. I'm going to use a pink crayon here, and I'm going to kind of lightly outline, which means trace over my pencil for this part, so I know my flowers are going to be kind of a pinkish, just to give them some more interest here. Just tracing over each flower using a crayon. These are just some little details that I want to stay, and when I paint, the crayon's going to stay there. Alright, now I think I'm actually ready for the marker part. So before we ever paint it, we're going to use markers. So I'm just going to start off with the black. So I'm just taking a black marker. Anywhere I know that's going to be really dark, I'm going to color. Now, you don't have to color solid. It's not like you're doing this whole picture with marker, because remember, we're going to be painting with the marker. So when I color with mine, I'm kind of barely pressing down, almost like I'm scribbling, but it's still neat. Okay, just kind of lightly leaving it. You can see leaving in some white spaces, because when we add water, it's going to blend those colors together. So that's the black. Anything I need black. Again, it's darker up here because that's where I know, and maybe there's some darker feathers inside. So don't color solid unless you want that to be a really dark part. The next color I'm going to use is yellow for the beak. So you can see here I'm using some yellow. Just taking a yellow, it doesn't matter what color yellow, and I'm just kind of lightly coloring again, not solid. Then, oh, I forgot the dark part of the eye. So I'm going to color in, I'm actually just going to kind of color in the eye there. And if you wanted to, you could use your black crayon for that too, since we're not really going to paint on the eye because it's such a tiny detail. So there we go, just color that in with a black crayon. So there we go. Now I'm going to move on to what robins are known for, which is this bright orange part on them. And so I'm going to kind of lightly color this part because it's a lighter part on the bird. You can see here. And you know you want like a shadow to be, that's when you really want to kind of actually color with it. So I kind of really colored solid here, but left this more of a scribble. Now I'm going to go to the robins, bright blue eggs. Robins do actually lay blue eggs, so taking a blue marker, a light blue, kind of lightly coloring these in. So before you ever add water to anything, go ahead and color in each section. So just lightly coloring it in. Same thing with the nest. I actually had two kinds of browns. I'm going to use those, so you're welcome to use more than one of the same color. Had a light brown called Frostina, and then just a regular brown. I don't know the name of this one. And I'm going to kind of use those to lightly kind of color in this part of the nest. Again, we're just kind of getting some color on here. Still want it to be neat, but you don't have to color in solid like if you're normally coloring something. Then anywhere I see shadows, which would be closer to where the bird's sitting, and then anywhere I want to add some extra darker areas, I'm going to kind of go back and add this darker marker, especially here around where the eggs are, because there would be some shadows, right? That's what makes something look more 3D, is when you add shadows. Alright, so there we go. I got that. Same thing, since I have brown out, I'm going to go ahead and do the brown on the tree branches, like so. And then think about the lights, like say the sun's up here, I'd have a little shadow on the bottom parts of the tree. So I'm just kind of coloring that in dark. Now I'm going to take a pink, since I decided my flowers to be pink. If you want your flowers to be a different color, that's up to you. I'm only going to add some pink kind of around the inside of the flower. Again, think where the shadows might be. And we'll blend it later, so the rest of the flowers will be. Remember, I'm kind of coloring on top of my crayon, but it's going to show up when I paint over it. Now the last thing you're going to do is the sky. Pick a color for your sky. Since I use my light blue for the eggs, I'm going to use this darker blue for the sky. Now be careful with the sky. You just want to kind of lightly color back and forth. Don't color it in solid. You will be blending these colors with water here in a minute, right? The magic part's about to happen. Alright, so right now it kind of looks like I have a scribbled artwork. And if this was art class, I'd be like, you need to take your time and color some more. But we're going to be painting with markers. So here's where the magic happens. Take just my cup of water, my paintbrush. I'm just going to start here in the bird. You're welcome to start anywhere. I'm going to start in the bird and work my way around. So I'm going to start here in the black area, and I'm going to just start painting on top of it, and you're going to notice instantly that your marker has turned into paint, right? And the blacks are going to look more gray the more water you add, right? Because to make gray, you add black and white. So the more water you add, it's going to be. Now remember, if you have very thin paper at this time, you don't want to add too much water, or you will put a hole in your paper. So just be aware of that. Pay attention to that. So I'm just kind of painting, and you'll notice where my crayon is, it's not being affected. Where I did it white, it's kind of staying white with my white crayon. And there we go. I have some darker areas. And when this dries, if you're not happy with the color it is, you can add more. You can add more later. So now I am going to work on a different area, because if I try to work right here right now, this is wet and it might blend into it, and I don't want the black and the orange to blend. So I'm going to go up here and blend my tree branch while that's kind of drying a little bit. So you can see my browns are starting to blend. So you want to be careful when you are painting with water or watercolors at any time that you want the area next to what you're painting to be dry, so that way the colors don't accidentally blend together. Sometimes you want that to happen, but in this case we don't. So there we go. It's giving this time a little bit to dry, so now I'm going to go in and I'm going to paint the robin's belly. So you can see I don't want to get too close, because then the black is going to start blending in and we don't want that. So be careful when you're going next to a different color so you don't blend them. So now I'm going into my shadow here, and you can see it's going to be a lot darker because I colored it a lot darker. But water is turning our markers into paint. So if you have plain markers at home, you can paint even if you don't have paints. So there we go. There's the belly. Now I'm going to get a little bit of water on the beak here for a yellow beak. Now I am going to go and work in the flowers, since I want the belly to dry before I do the eggs. Alright, so flowers, we're just getting those a little wet. Oh, another fun fact, make sure each time you change colors you're rinsing out your brush, okay? Because if I'm painting this, I have black all over my brush, right? And I don't want it to get all over the orange. So anytime I'm switching from one color area to another, I am going to rinse my brush. So there we go. Pink's going to be very light, remember, because all I did was color just a little bit. So they're very light pink flowers. If you wanted yours to be darker, you could add more colors or whatever color flower you picked. But you can see my crayon is still shining through there. There we go. Just painting each of these flowers with just a little bit of water, and it's blending that marker, because it's a washable marker. There we go. All finished. Now I'm going to show you how to use those special things I talked about earlier, the salt and the plastic wrap or plastic bag, whatever kind of plastic you have. So first off, I'm going to do the eggs. So just going to blend each of the eggs first. Don't add too much water, that'll make it a little too light, or it might start blending in some of that brown. So be careful when you're adding the water. Spread it out. Don't use too much. Alright, now that I have my eggs, while they're still wet, this is important that you do this while they are still wet. You'll be able to tell they're still wet because they're shiny. There we go. So now I'm going to take my salt, pinch it in my finger, and sprinkle it on here. Now you're going to want to leave this on here until it dries, okay? So you want to make sure that you leave that on until it dries, and you'll see it'll make that sprinkly effect here, the speckled effect, once it's dry. So leave it on there and let it dry. While that's drying, then you want to take your water and start to blend in your nest. Okay, you want to do 1/2 of the nest at a time. So I'm just going to paint about here and stop, because you want to also put the plastic wrap on while the paint is still wet. So getting close to the robin, but trying not to blend it into the egg or the robin's body. So while it's still wet, I'm going to take one piece of my plastic and I am going to press it down onto there and leave it. You want it to be very crinkled, because that's going to make those different textures inside the nest that you can see here. Leave that again on there until it dries. So while that's there, I'm going to do the next half. So doing 1/2 at a time, just because it's such a big area to paint. I want to make sure it doesn't dry. So paint a little bit at a time, add the plastic, and then let it dry before you take it off. Sometimes it's hard to let it dry because you want to see what it looks like, but be patient, let it dry. I promise you it'll look really cool. So again, plastic wrap, kind of crunch it up there, and you can see the salt starting to work there, right? Pretty cool. But again, press that down and let it dry a little bit. While that's drying, I'm going to paint in my background now, which I've kind of scribbled in with some blue. So again, just taking your water, blending it Again, the more dark your color, the harder it's going to be to blend those colors. So if you have really dark areas where you color it a little too hard, that won't blend completely. That's okay. It'll just have some texture in your background. But just a tip, when you are coloring, don't color too dark. Color lightly with your marker so you can blend it a little bit easier. Okay, so I'm using kind of a lot of water for this one because I want it to be a lighter blue for the background. Being careful as I go around my bird and the nest so I don't accidentally blend those colors. Like so. Just keep dipping in my water as I go to make sure that I have enough to blend. But don't go back on top of what you've already painted. That can take away the color actually, because the paintbrush will want to soak that color up. So keep going as you're painting and don't go back on top. Just let what you've already painted dry and then go back once it's dry if you really feel like you need to add something different to it. So just blending as I go, being careful to go around each of those trees and nest and bird. There we go. Now blending this. Also, something you may notice while you're painting is your paper may start to curl a little bit. That's okay. It happens when you add a water to your paper. Once it's dry, it will flatten out, and if it doesn't, you can always set underneath a heavy book or something to flatten it back out. Don't worry that it's starting to crinkle. Some people often like to tape down the sides of their paper so it doesn't do that. So if you have some masking tape, don't use Scotch tape. That will rip your paper. If you have masking tape or painter's tape, you can tape down the sides of your artwork, but mine's attached in the sketchbook still, so it's not crinkling as much. But if yours was a ripped out page, just know it's okay if it starts to curl. Once it dries, it tends to flatten out a little more, so don't worry about that. So again, just taking the time, carefully blending each color. Once I think I'm done, I'm going to check to make sure I haven't forgotten any areas that I may see that are still white. Clean my brush, remember, then go back and kind of blend them some more. So you can do that as you go if you notice any areas you want to add more details to. Now, this isn't dry yet, so I need to wait, but you can see that the salt did work, made the speckled effect on the egg. And now this is mostly dry, so I can carefully lift it off a little. That one may still be a little wet, so I'm going to here we go, and you can see it kind of makes this really cool texture on it. It's got darker areas and lighter areas where the plastic wrap kind of moved the paint. So it makes it look like a nest texture would. So if yours isn't dry, let it dry more before you take it off. Otherwise, the colors will just blend back together. So you can see here, it gave it more of a texture. You're welcome to, when it dries, go back and add more. Like right here, it looks like I accidentally blended some. I could always go back once it's dry, add a little bit more color to it, and then paint over it again. But again, only do that when it's dry, otherwise it might mess up your marker. So there we go. We have a robin painting just using markers, crayons, and some water at home. And if you wanted, you can add the salt and the plastic wrap. So I'd love for you to send me these pictures. Remember, you can use Artsonia to do that if you would like, or you can just email me your artwork. But please be creative. Even if you don't send it to me, make sure you're writing, reading, drawing, being creative at home during this time. But just wanted to show you what I was doing at home and give you a way to do it as well. But I'd love to see what you make, and I hope you have a great day.